Faughnan. Welcome to the Trails Collective interview series. Thanks for joining me tonight. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
So you became a trail runner about 2 years ago, and
Yes.
in the past 2 years, looking at just your Instagram and then reading about, I believe it's Stash. What is that called?
Yep. Stash strong.
Stash strong. It seems like the stoke is pretty high with you, and I
Yes.
can't wait to get into that because I love running, and so anybody else that loves it, it's just wonderful to talk to those kind of people. So you are 31 years old, you are a mom of two, and you live in Vestal, New York. So are there a lot of, what are your favorite trails out in Vestal?
So there's not a ton, but there are enough to keep me happy. I think the most frequent, the one I frequent the most is the nature preserve at Binghamton University. You can string together, you can string together as many miles as you want in there, but you can get a solid 10 miles in without crossing over too many times. You get some good elevation, some really good technical trails, some good single track. So I like that one a lot. It's less than half a mile from my home, so I'm there almost every day.
So do you primarily run mostly on trails, or do you do any road running?
I primarily am on trails now. I do some road running. I was selected to run the New York City Marathon with Stash Strong. So that, if that happens in November, so I've been trying to get back onto the roads so that it's not such a shock to my system when it does happen. But yeah, mostly on trails.
So that's really funny because I live about a mile from Buttermilk Falls, and I don't run there at all.
Oh my God.
I know. I've been doing a lot of training on the roads, and I'm in a season where it's just thankfully coming, and I'm enjoying it. So,
Yeah.
I get out there a little bit, but not like somebody who, if you lived where I live, you'd be there every day.
Yeah.
But speaking of Buttermilk Falls, you just did the Cayuga Trails 50 miler. So I did that race 2 years ago,
Okay.
and it is beautiful, but a burner, especially the second loop.
Yes.
And it was also your first 50 miler,
Yep.
unofficially, but come on.
Yeah.
It's not like you were doing loops in the road. So tell me about that. Were you in the group with Nick Reitz and Heather Colt? And okay, so was getting updates about you guys most of the day because Nick and I are friends.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it seemed really, really awesome. And actually, 2 days ago, I believe he and Heather, I think, actually went back and did it again because she
Yep.
didn't finish, but you finished. So
Yep.
tell me about, I want to hear everything. Tell me about your first 50 miler. Tell me everything.
I'm not even really sure where to begin, honestly. You can probably tell by the smile on my face. It was, aside from the birth of my kids, probably the best day of my life. To rewind, so about 2 years ago when you were in Cayuga, that was my first time running I ran the last 3 miles with my coach, Chris Cowden. So I run with ESR Endurance, and it was to see him he did the marathon that time, and to see him doing that and to just be a part of that energy and a part of the whole race, everything. It's such a, I get chills talking about it. It's an entity unto its own, and I knew I had to be a part of it. So after that race, I said, okay, next year I'm going to do it. And so last year I signed up for the 50 miler and ended up, it's just one of those things where life got in the way, and it was just my whole entire year last year running was just one big crash and burn. And I managed one loop, but didn't finish the 50. I knew I wasn't going to. It was just one of those things. So this year I was on a tear to finish. I was going to finish this thing come hell or high water. And we kind of knew once the whole COVID thing started that it was probably not a good chance that the race was going to actually happen. But Chris, Heather, and we kind of said, hey, listen, we're doing this thing. With kids, obviously it's hard to kind of manage that training all the time year round. So we said, you know what, we're going to do it. We did, and that day, so we went up Friday night and we stayed at the Gray Haven Motel. We love the Gray Haven. It's like my favorite place.
Me, I'm like, that's like, oh God, no.
We love it. It's so much fun. But we went up there Friday. We stayed Saturday night too. And it was just like the whole week, even the week leading up to it, we were just buzzing, like just the energy. We were so electric with excitement and the anticipation. And we finally got up there. We got into Ithaca. And we went out and kind of scoped out for our crew. We each had somebody crewing for us. And we went out and scoped out the aid stations and where we would be coming through and all that kind of stuff. And it was, none of us slept the night before. And Saturday morning, it was just like the most, there aren't quite adequate words to describe it, but we got to the start line Saturday morning and it was just perfect. We had our closest friends there. We had our crew there. We all hugged each other before we started. I was crying. It was a disaster. I'm a big crier. So it was such a long journey to get to that start line. And I actually have this bracelet. You're not gonna be able to see it, but it's the coordinates for the start finish line of Cayuga. And
wow.
It was a gift to me, just to kind of remind you of where you're headed and where you're going, and whatever the struggle is, that you're going somewhere, and to remember what it is. So this course means a lot to me. So to be there
sounds great. I should tell Ian about that, because he's always looking for like weird race swag. He gets that stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Like one time I got a necklace with a pine cone on it. I was like, thanks. I still have it.
Cool nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just
before the race though. You said the year before was like a shit show. So tell me what happened. What was going on?
Yeah, so back in 2017, I got divorced, and I had a 5-month-old, and I had my 3-year-old at the time. So life just kind of like got really crazy really quick, and it was just kind of like a snowball. I ended up really quickly into like the victim mentality, and nothing is going right for me, and nothing will ever go right for me. And when you think that way, that's exactly, what you put out there is what you get back. And that's kind of exactly what happened. And for the next year, I set all these really high goals. I wanted to run Breakneck, and I bombed that, and I got sick the week before. I wanted to run Cayuga 50 and didn't manage to. I barely strung together the training to pull off the 25 miles. I signed up for Twisted Branch, and that never came through. So it was just like literally my whole entire year was exactly what you said. It was just a complete shit show, because it was nothing but me making excuses and 100 reasons why I couldn't go and do a run or go do the training. So with Cayuga, I remember sitting, I was in a Core Life, and I was sitting there with Chris, my coach, and it was the beginning of May, and I just started crying and said, it's not going to happen for me this year. I know it's not. I can pull off some kind of mileage, but not 50, and not in a way that I deserve, or not in a way that I would earn it. That's the thing about Cayuga, is we talk about that course like it's a human being, because it is a living, breathing being, and to just kind of stroll into that race and walk up to that start line like, well, I put in half the amount of the effort, but I'll probably pull this off anyways. Like, that doesn't happen. That course will chew you up and spit you back out, and you have to earn the right to race it and to run it. And I just knew it wasn't happening that year. So Chris said, well, you know what? See what happens. Stay signed up for the 50. You get drop bags. Worst case scenario, if you want to run 10, you run 10. If you want to run 30, you run 30. Just see what happens. So I did. I'm really glad I did. It was a great experience to finally be in the race and to finally be a part of that. But what it did was it motivated me. I talked to Heather a lot about it afterwards, and just, we both were like, we have unfinished business. Me, Heather, and Chris, we all DNF'd it last year. So we all had this fire that we were like, we can't walk away from Cayuga without it being exactly what we wanted it to be, and exactly what we hope it would be. So we kind of left the race last year we were super bummed, but we had a few drinks after, and we said, okay, next year. And we know what we got to do. We just got to do it. So that's exactly what we did.
So if you started trail running like basically 2 years ago, if looking at your ultra sign up is right, So you had like one good year of trail running and then like a really bad year?
Pretty much, yeah. I would say I barely even had one good year. So when I first started, it
Well,
was
why did you
June.
start trail running? Let's start there, I guess. Like what did you how long ago? Like did you run in high school, college? Were you on the roads first? Like bring me let's start.
Okay, my running story, sure.
Yeah.
So I was actually a team sport athlete. So I played lacrosse all throughout high school. That's what I hoped to go to college for. My senior year of high school, I was in a lacrosse game and got hit in the face with a shot on goal. And so I was a defender. So I got hit in the face. A girl took a shot on goal and busted up my jaw. And it was kind of one of those things that like, it scared the shit out of me. But then it also was just like, like, what am I doing? I loved the game, but I don't know, it just kind of ended my collegiate aspirations, I guess, for lacrosse. But when I didn't have that team sport, I didn't know what to do. So I was like, well, running has always been the thing that we do when we get in trouble, but it always makes us a little bit better. So I was like, all right, why don't I just start running? And I'll never forget my very first run. I ran a little bit through college just on my own, but my first run where I had signed up for a local 5K, this was probably 12 years ago at this point. I went out for a 10-minute run and I thought I was going to die. I had zero business being out there. I had no idea what I was doing. I had this stupid little like Timex watch from Walmart that I had picked up. And, but that was kind of, I never stopped after that. So slowly but surely, I went through on roads, the 5Ks, the 10Ks, the half marathon. I finally decided I want to run my first marathon, and I got really into running. I really wanted to qualify for Boston. I had signed up with a coach, and 5 weeks before my first marathon, I found out I was pregnant with my second child. So I was like, oh, okay. Oh no, 10 weeks before. So I was 5 weeks pregnant. No, I don't know what the timeline was. I don't remember. It was a bunch of time. I was 10 weeks pregnant with my first one, or with my second, when I ran my first marathon. So I ran the Lehigh Valley Marathon with my daughter in tow, and it was definitely not the time that I was hoping for, but I ran it and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I knew from there, after I had my daughter, everything with the divorce and all that kind of stuff happened. And I got really burnt out with running. I signed up for the Philly Half Marathon. And that's when I ended up with Chris, running with him. And that's my half marathon PR. I loved it. The training was great. He was exactly the right fit for me. But it was one of those things that like, I didn't totally love what I was doing. Like it was a struggle every day to go out and run. It was a struggle every day to try to find the motivation of like, why am I doing this? So after that, I took quite a long break from running. I mean, I would do runs here and there, but probably wasn't until, that was in November of 2017. It probably wasn't until March or April of the following year that I sat down with Chris in a Starbucks, and I knew that he had just shared on Facebook that he signed up for Cayuga again. And I remember looking at him and saying, okay, I have something crazy for you. And he's like, oh God, okay, what? And I said, how about I run a 50 miler? He was like, okay, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I saw you signed up for Cayuga. I said, I saw the race 3 years ago. It's so cool just to see it go on. And I said, I want to be a part of that. I'm burnt out with the roads. I'm burnt out with that community and with the people. I said, I just kind of want to be out in the woods doing something that, I'm not surrounded by other people. I can just go out and be alone and do my own thing. He's like, okay, let's do it. But he's like, but you should probably try trail running first before you decide that you want to go run a 50 miler on the trail. So I was like, all right. So I'll never forget June 1st, 2 years ago, I went out for my first trail run. I think I tripped 3 times and ate it pretty hard one of the times. And it was anything less than graceful, but I was hooked from there. So I started doing the trail running 2 years ago, like you said, almost to the day, and never looked back. It was fun. The first couple races I did were shorter, so like 10Ks, and some of them are pretty like there's trying to think, like Salt Springs down in PA. They have some pretty gnarly hills, and I remember running Camptown, like the Camptown racetrack, Camptown ladies sing the song.
Yeah.
Ran that race and ended up coming away with the first female win, and that was like my first eye-opening, like, holy shit, I really enjoy this, and I'm like not terrible at it. So that was it. I was hooked, and I started picking up the distances, and then I signed up for a Water Gap 50K, and that was my first
favorite.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm so excited to go back this year. I love Water Gap. So that was my first ultra. I love that course. I love it.
Yeah. I did it the first year, and then I did it this past year, and it's just, yeah, I just have so many good memories of that, because it was my first ultra, and then this past year it's my PR. So it's just, and it's just such a like small, like little community, and like Ian's the race director, and so that just feels like home. And yeah, I mean, I would go back, like if I was trained more every year. It's just, yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, it'll be great to, if I do it this year, it'll be great to see you there, but I don't really know what races are going to happen, but and also my training on the roads isn't really exactly like ultra. It's more like I haven't run longer than 2 hours in a while. So yeah, but it's wonderful. And so I saw that on your ultra sign up, and I was like, oh yay, this is wonderful. So she knows.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. It was awesome. Yeah. I love that course.
So what, so last year you signed up for Cayuga and you only got one loop. Why didn't you just sign up for the marathon and like crush the marathon? And then like I did the marathon the first year, and then the next year I did the 50 miler. And the marathon is like, that's no joke. Like honestly, that feels like it was hard. And so then doing 2 loops, I was like, this is really hard.
Yep. So it's funny because that's always the thing. We went up for a training run back in the beginning of May, and it was just the one loop, and we finished, and it was one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, we have to do this again. Like that.
Stairs twice. You're like, oh God. Oh God.
Yep. Yeah. But so I didn't sign up. I considered dropping down to the marathon distance when I knew I wasn't going to do the 50. But for me, it was a big giant question mark. I didn't know if I was going to show up. I knew I was way undertrained, but I didn't know if I was going to show up that day with this like insatiable fire that would get me to a 50K distance, or, if by some insane leap of faith I was going to end up finishing and then dying at the end of it. I don't know. So I didn't know, but I knew that I could have drop bags. And that was kind of important to me too, to know that I had my stuff waiting for me. Whereas in the marathon distance, you don't get the drop bags. So I figured might as well stay with the 50, and see what happens. And just the biggest thing for me was I really wanted to do the 50K distance, like at least get back to the underpass. But I knew as soon as I crossed, I was like, nope, I'm done. Took off my bib. I handed it to the volunteer, and I was like, I'm done. She was like, are you sure? I'm like, yep.
Yep. Time for some in and out. No.
Yep.
Well, that's really neat. So like what, so you mentioned that you were kind of burnt out on the roads. Like what, I've gone through that and myself, and I'm back, and like I came back, like I came out of it, because I think the reason I moved to trails was it is fun, but also, yeah, I was like burnout with splits, and I felt like a lot of people on the roads have been running since they were in middle school, and I haven't. And so it was a little bit frustrating where sometimes I would get into like a self-defeating, like I don't have the history, my legs just don't know how to sprint. And I mean, I feel like maybe my potential is capped at some point. And I think that can be a little bit demoralizing. And so I think that that's what also spurred me. And then also like I had success the first trail run I ran on. So success makes you happy. You want to keep doing it. And then, I mean, I got a little bit burnt out on trails, so I went back to the road. And now my mindset is more of, I like to think of it as like a plastic growth mindset, where I'm like, okay, I never am going to be like world class at the roads, like never. But I like being able to see progress. And also I like it that I mean, you can always run a mile farther. Like you can always go farther. And I think that that's cool, but also I like being like, can I go faster? You know, like,
Yeah.
can I do this faster? Because like when you don't come from speed, also like I don't have a history of like, oh, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. It's more like if I keep like doing these things every week, like I should, like, even though the graph is up and down, it should trend upwards. So tell me about your experiences on the roads and what ultimately just like made you burnt out and you were like, I need to go on the trails.
Yeah. So I think it very similar to you where like, I don't come from a running background. I didn't run all through school. I didn't, I think I ran like, I think I ran 2 cross country races in high school. And then I was like, nah, I'm done. Like, it just wasn't my thing at that point in time. And so when I started running on roads, it was kind of a similar thing where like, I surprised myself. Like I've always been an athlete, so I knew it wasn't going to be like this death march through every road race I did. But I also, when you start getting into it, you start constantly doing this and you're constantly checking your splits and your pace and you're comparing yourself to other people. And you start to slowly integrate in with the other, like the runners, you know, and calling yourself a runner becomes weird. And then now I'm not fast enough and now I'm not doing enough. And it just became this whole thing. And I think there was also just some not so savory characters in the community at the time that
there's a bunch of dicks and you got to be like, yo, back up. Okay. Like 7-minute pace is not an easy run. And you know, it helped me to get off Strava. I was like, I can't look at this anymore. These like humble brags, like, oh, took it easy today, 6:30 pace. Like, I'm just like, shh, you're a dick.
I know. And that's what it was. And it honestly, so a lot of it was that, like, I was so sick of, listen, I mean, if you see my Instagram, like, you know that I prefer spandex, but it's not because I have a great butt. I have 0 butt. I prefer spandex because it's comfortable. But when I was on roads, I would show up to these races and a couple of the people that I was at the time friends with, I mean, they would just walk up and literally be like, oh my God, my shorts are so short today. And like walk off, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? Who cares? Like, you know, I walk in with like looking homeless, and I'm like,
but you know the guys in the half tights, you know they mean business. You're like, oh shoot, it's going down. I gotta stay with that guy.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't look fast. I don't belong here. So, but that's kind of what it was. It was just it was a mix of a lot of different things, just the physical burnout. I was injured all the time. I was more of a quantity person than a quality person. So it was just, you know, how long can I go run for? How many miles can I go run for? How fast can I run them? And there was really no rhyme or reason. I honestly didn't pay a whole lot of attention to nutrition. Like I didn't put all of the pieces together. I focused on go do your miles so that you can brag about it later. I was kind of the epitome of, you know, how do you know if somebody's run a marathon? Oh, they'll tell you. Like that was at that point. And I just realized, like, why am I doing this? I'm not happy with running. I know that there's something more there. You know, I keep doing it, so I must like it. But at that time,
feeling like shit every day. Like
exactly.
You get tired of just like, because you can always run more. And then you see these like Michael Wardians and Zach Bitters and just that like can keep going. And I mean, like they are an exception to the rule. Like, I mean, it's just, you know, for me, I just got tired of feeling like shit. And then I was like, I gotta get off Strava because I know I can be a competitive person. I've worked very hard at not being a competitive person unless I'm in a race. But I know that if I expose myself to like where I think I should be or like whatever, I mean, nobody knows like what you're going through. Like you seem like you had a very high stressful life. Like that means that like all stress is stress. So like, you might not want to run 10 miles tomorrow. You might want to run 6 because you're tired. Or like you might not want to run at 8:30 pace because you're tired. So you want to run at 9:30 pace because your child was up all night and, you know, whatever. But like, you can't write a paragraph on Strava about that. So like, it's also like, then you feel like you're embarrassed. Yeah, no, it just mind fuck. Sometimes the roads are a mind fuck.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, like, I knew I needed something different. When I went to Chris and said, hey, listen, I want to run 50 miles. He was like, well, why? I said, because I need something that's going to change my life. I can't keep going the way that I'm going. And quite frankly, even when I did switch to trails, I did kind of just keep going the way that I was going, even though I put it out there that I wasn't. I still hadn't truly changed my life the way that I wanted to, or make the changes within myself. And that's why Cayuga 50 is such a huge thing for me. That just that course and those trails and that event itself. Like I told Ian, it's life changing. That day changed my life. And so to know that, you know, going from roads and making the transition to trails, it's one of those things that you're like, I'm not going to sit here and explain. I tried explaining myself. I tried defending myself, but what is that doing? It's not proving what am I proving to anybody? The only way I can go out and prove that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, or that I'm actually making changes, and that I'm actually like truly starting to enjoy life again, is by going and doing it, going and enjoying life. You can't just post about it on Strava or on Instagram and say, oh, look at how fun I am and look at how cool it is that I'm running trails. Like, I truly feel that on the inside too. And it was a good move for me to move to trails.
Yeah, I think also like when you switch to trails also, you like suddenly try to give yourself permission that it's okay to go slower, and it's okay to, because, oh, they're harder or whatever. And some people do need that. They need like a transition period of like caring a lot about pace and stuff, to like still caring about it, but then acting like they don't care about it. And then finally, like, it actually doesn't matter because I'm going to be walking up this 15% grade hill. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And no, I completely agree with you. Like, I went through that too. And then the flip side is like, so now like the trail running community, great. Tons of my best friends are trail runners. I love it. That's all they do. And now me like transitioning back to the road and being like, actually, I like running on the road. And I mean, it was very strange to then say that, like,
Yeah.
actually, I like running on the road. I like doing 2 workouts a week, but it was more like, it was just fun. And also I had 2 training partners that made it really fun. I was able to treat myself like a beginner again. I think somehow I got that like chip off my shoulder, like that monkey off my back. And just being like, I want to learn, and I like running, and I like working hard. And I think that's really cool with trails, is like, it's like a different measurement. Like, you know, if you're working hard. And for you, Cayuga Trails 50 was like just like, you know, the party at the end. Like, you got to show how hard you've been working, and that it's actually come to fruition, which must have felt really awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. And I think we were very fortunate to have a very supportive group come up, you know, socially distanced and safe and everything, of course, but to have our crew there and a couple of our friends who were there. We also had one of our friends is a photographer, and she came up and spent the entire day with us and took pictures, and Nick took a great video of us all throughout the day. And it was just, I looked back at the pictures of the finish, and everyone, I'm like, oh man, why can't I just make one good face ever? And then I realized when I was looking at me finish, me coming down that little path right next to the that little, whatever, the shelter, the North Shelter or whatever it is, coming down, I have this look on my face, and I remember it so clearly, and it's something I will remember for as long as I live. That feeling of your chest tightens up, and all of a sudden you just start crying and you can't stop because you're breathing heavy. And I remember looking down at my watch. I was running like a 7.5 minute mile pace coming down that line at mile 50.1, because I was just that was a finish line for so much for me. It was more than I just finished 50 miles. It was 2 years worth of garbage that I had finally just conquered and defeated. And the pictures are of me like ugly crying the whole time. And it's some of the most remarkable pictures I've ever seen, because that's another thing I love about ultras. It's such raw emotion. There is no other way to feel or experience that kind of feeling, of emotion, of growth, of anything, without just completely breaking yourself down for me 11 hours and 43 minutes, and just you finish and you let it all go, and the person you come out on the other side as is it's so awesome. It's very awesome.
That's incredible that you say that, because the other day I was thinking about this as well, like, and I think that these photos are also going to be like, it's not like a photo doesn't like affirm that you did anything, but in low moments,
Yep.
sometimes if you look at a photo and you're like, I did that, and that was so hard, but it was also just the most fun I've ever had, and I'm so happy and I look confident. And I know for me, whenever I like just need like a little bit of a pep me up, or I just am not feeling that great, or like things are going wrong, I look at the photos from the Hartford Marathon that I did, because like every time I'm like, damn, I did that. That was me, and I can do it again. And also,
Yep.
like, I can like own this day. And I think that that's like exactly how these Cayuga Trail photos are going to be for you. And so, like, I think that's like awesome. Like the next time, you know, you have like a low day or a low moment, you know, it's just, you're going to look at those photos and be like, yes, I did that. And that's so cool.
Yeah, it's they're such cool photos. They're photos. I've never had any race photos like these before. I mean, there's the photos of just the crying and the hugging and the literal just collapsing to your knees and just like letting it all go. I mean, you don't get that anywhere else. And quite frankly, I don't know that I'll ever run another event that holds so much meaning to me, even though it wasn't even an event at the time, you know, this race. But yeah, it's really something remarkable.
Yeah, I ugly cry at like the end of every race. Like I swear, like I don't know. I mean, just it's coming. Like
Yeah,
and I don't cry in like I don't cry outside of that. Like I
yeah,
cry when I'm cutting onions, and I cry at the end of races. That's about it. And but it's the best kind of crying. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
best.
It really.
So take me through the race. Did you have any low moments? Like how did you prepare? What was your nutrition? Tell me about it.
Sure. So, in terms of training, it was pretty much your like normal training, just leading up to a 50-mile race, as normal as that can be. A lot of back-to-back long runs, a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of big week miles. Hung around 60 to 70 miles throughout the whole time. So not like crazy training, but
Substantial.
So it was enough to prepare me.
I mean, that's actually a lot for a single mother working a full-time job.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was. And that's why we were part of the reason we were so dead set on doing the race on the day, on May 30th, because I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this for. It's a lot of time. But yeah, so the day of, it was, I hate to like sound douchey, but I honestly like didn't have any low moments. I think I was just so stoked to be there and to be on those trails. And I had dreamed of that day for so long. The amount of bad dreams, like the bad wedding day dreams that you have of like, everything's going to go wrong. And I had all of those and I had a lot of anxiety, but I also knew that Chris had prepared me exactly the way I needed to be. I was in exactly the shape I needed to be in. I think I ran the race exactly how I should have. There wasn't ever a point. I mean, that course is tough. Like, don't get me wrong. It sucked. The whole thing sucked, right? The course just it's tough, but it sucks in a good way. Where you just, I was familiar with the trails and with the course and knew where I could push and where I needed to kind of give back. And I just kept reminding myself the whole day, let her dictate what you do. If you want to take this hill, take this hill. If you don't want to take this hill, don't take this hill. I think the biggest thing was just respecting the course the whole day. And at any point, if you want to get cocky, she'll let you know and you won't finish. Or, 1,000 other things could go wrong. I definitely ate it a bunch of times. But it was really cool. There was a bunch of people who, there's a couple people who definitely could see that I wasn't like in the freshest of shape. It was like around mile 40 and I was coming back down through Lickbrook and a couple of people had said, "Are you doing the 50?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And they were like, "Good luck." Like, "Thank you." It was really cool. Like, just the community was really cool that day. But it was, I don't know. I stayed, the first loop it was good until it wasn't good, right? So like, it's always around that, at the underpass, coming back up the Finger Lakes Trail, that is just the nastiest piece of that course because it is that long, slow, it's like 6 miles. Well, it's like 4 miles from there to Old Mill, but from there to the finish, it's like 7.5 miles of hill. And it's some of it you're walking, some of it you can barely run. And it was just like that ate me up at that point. And it was starting to get hot. So when we came back down at the halfway point, I came in, I sat down and I said to my crew, was one of my best friends, Erin. I said, Erin, your job for the rest of the day is to make sure I'm drinking and to make sure I stay cold. Or stay cool. So she was loading me up with ice everywhere. She's putting it down my back. She's putting it in my pack. Pedialyte all day long. She was making sure that I was eating and drinking. Yeah, it was so gross. Like the things that
Mountain Dew.
Oh, lots of Mountain Dew. And I couldn't
Nothing
even
better than a Mountain Dew at mile 40. That is my like
cold, ice cold Mountain Dew. I know, it's the best. And pickles. I had a lot of pickles.
Oh yeah, pickles, 100%.
Yeah. But it was at that point, my hips and my lower back started to bother me a little bit. And so I was lucky enough, one of my friends is a physical therapist. And so I came in and I said, oh, Brittany, thank God you're here. I said, just do the thing, do whatever you do. And I laid down, and there's pictures of her, like she's got me all bent around and pushing on things. And I'm telling you, she saved my life for that second loop, because she did it. She adjusted me 2 other times and just stretched me out where I needed to be. And so honestly, I can't give myself credit for the last loop. I have to give my crew and my physical therapist credit, because they really got me into shape and kept me going. But the one thing that I really took away from the second loop, I felt better on the second loop than I did on the first. And I don't know if it was just because every step, every mile that ticked off on my watch, or every you kind of section off that course, right? You know, there's certain pieces that you're all right, just get through this piece, then just get through that piece. And every one of those that I put behind me, I knew I was getting closer. And so I was coming down into Buttermilk, and I think I was still up towards the top, Lake Tremont, that's where it was. And Chris was coming up on the other side. And it was to the point where he was about to go off onto the Finger Lakes Trail and head up that way. And I was coming down, and there was only literally 5 seconds worth of time where we could have seen each other before that was it, until the finish. And at that point, Heather unfortunately, she got lost and dropped out, and I felt so bad for her. Oh my God, it was such a bummer.
Okay, she did it this past week.
She did, which is even more of an incredible feat than what we did, because she did it by herself. She's crazy. She's incredible. But there was that 5 seconds, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm not going to see him. And sure enough, I see this quick, he was wearing these lime green shorts that day, and I see this quick flash of lime green, and I literally was ah! And he stopped and looked over, and I was oh my God. And I don't think I ever ran so fast down a bunch of stairs to get over to him. And I gave him a big hug, and I said, listen, man, we're going to do it. You have to finish, because I'm going to finish. We're doing this. And it was that moment that I still knew I had to come back up out of Buttermilk, and that sucks. And, to still go through another 13 miles. But it was at that moment that I was we're doing this. We're going to finish this thing. And finally, and I think it was just the stoke of the day, and the excitement and the passion and just all of it was just so exciting. And to be able to share that with the people that are closest to me in my life. And there was just nothing like it. I was happy the whole day. I've got pictures of me running through the creek right before underpass at mile 43. And I'm there was no way I should have felt like that at mile 43, but I was just so happy and so grateful to be there at that point. And that's honestly what it was. I mean, for the whole day, it was just a lot of just heart carrying me through. And nutrition wise, it was just make sure you keep drinking. My indicator was, as long as I'm peeing, I'm good. And that's exactly what was happening. So, it was overall it was a really well executed day, I think.
And I mean, it was your first 50. So who's to say that that's not your normal, that maybe you're just going to hit a low point and then you're going to come back out of it. I mean, that's the point of ultras. You're going to hit a bunch of low points and you just come back out of them, because there's tons of running and tons of time left.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's what's so cool about it too, is you, even when you're running up and down these hills and you run up these hills and you red line, and then you do it because you know that you're going to recover. I love that about this sport, is that there's just so much that can happen in a day, that it's all troubleshooting. It's problem solving and it's troubleshooting. And I love that about it.
So 11 hours and how many minutes?
43.
Think you're going to do it again?
Yeah. There's no way I can't come back.
Good. And if I'm not doing it, I would love, I want to volunteer. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I'll definitely come out and support, because now I know you're going to be out there. I'm not quite ready to run 50 miles or 50K, so I'm not doing it, but I definitely will be out there. So
good. Yeah, if it happens this year, I'll be doing the 50K if it happens in July 18th. But next year you got to do it.
Well, yeah, we'll see how the year pans out. You know, I think all running is great to me, and but I just, it's like you just follow what you want to do, and then you're happier.
Yep, exactly.
Well, this 45 minutes has flown by. We could talk all day, but I want to be respectful of obviously your time. So to close out the interview, why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you, Instagram, Twitter, website, if you have a website, whatever. And yeah, that was great.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you. So Instagram is just my name, Elisabeth. I hate to say it, Elisabeth with an S, .Faughnan, my last name. And then I don't have a website, but I do have the stachestrong.org/Faughnan. Stachestrong is an organization. It's a 501c3 that I am very passionate about. It's one of my friends from high school who passed away 9 months ago, yesterday or the day before, of GBM brain cancer, brain tumor. So he was the one who actually convinced me to run cross country my senior year. And he quite frankly got me into running. And that man fought like hell for a long time with a very nasty disease. And he certainly did not lose. That is for sure. But I'm very, very fortunate and very lucky to be able to run with that team this year for the New York City Marathon. But just in general, I've been doing a lot of fun. My idea of fun is a lot different than a lot of other people's, but just a lot of really crazy things to bring awareness to GBM and to brain cancer, and to the organization itself, the family. So GJ Gerner was my friend who passed away, and his family, the Gerner family, they're lovely people. So it's a great organization. They're doing a lot of great things. So that is kind of the website. It kind of gives you a little bit of my story and why I got into running and why I want to run for Stash Strong and all that kind of stuff. So that's where you can find me online, I guess, on a website.
Cool. Well, I will put a link to that in the notes under this YouTube video. And
Awesome.
I read it, and it was really awesome. And also, everybody should check out your Instagram. It's beautiful and funny, and it's really wonderful. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. And it was wonderful to talk to you. You are just a burst of energy, and it's great.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you having me on and everything that you and Ian are doing. I love everything you guys are about and everything you're doing. I love being up in Ithaca. So thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Well, let me know when you're here, and maybe we can catch a run. I mean, I fall all the time on trails, but I'll try my best. And I know where all the good food is. So
perfect. That's all that matters, really.
All right. Well.